Welcome to the Lifeline podcast, where we hear the stories of athletes, leaders, and change makers, exploring the highs, the lows, and the defining moments that shape who they are today. I'm your host, Matthew Gibson, founder of Connecting the Dots, an initiative helping athletes unlock their potential both in and out of sport. On each episode, our guests share their journey line, a map of their story that highlights the challenges they faced, the lessons they learned, and the resilience that's carried them forward. This show is powered by Stillwave, a mental health and wellness platform created by athletes, for athletes, and for anyone striving for wellness. Be sure to subscribe, like, and follow so you don't miss a single conversation. Viewer discretion advised in this episode. Today we'll talk about some heavy topics in suicide, and just know that if you or someone that you know is struggling or in crisis or in need, please call 988 Suicide Prevention Hotline for help. But stay tuned for the episode. All right, welcome to the Lifeline podcast. Today's guest is a powerhouse in the mental health advocacy field. Fonda Bryant has turned her lived experience into a mission to save lives, raise awareness, and make sure no one struggles in silence. She has served with NAMI, AFSP, MHA of Central Carolinas, and founded her own nonprofit, Wellness Action Recovery. Her work has been featured nationally from CBS Weekend News and Essence to the Washington Post and MSNBC, and she's led major initiatives like the ACC Mental Health Summit and suicide prevention signage in parking decks across Charlotte and beyond. She has trained thousands in QPR, suicide prevention, and has been recognized as the 2021 National Remarkable Woman of the Year, among many other honors. Thank you, Ms. Fonda Bryant, for being on this episode with us. We appreciate you. I have a lot of respect and honor for you. So first and foremost, I want to say thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate that. I'm telling you, when you read some of the stuff I've done, sometimes it's hard to believe all the stuff I've done, but I just kind of take it in stride because at the end of the day, my goal is just to help people like me and to prevent suicide.
Absolutely. So I always like to share the story of how I first met you. So I think it might have been maybe 2 or 3 years ago at this point. I was jogging. It was one day after work. I was jogging on Moorhead, and you were on the corner of Moorhead, and I believe it was
Mint Street.
Mint Street, yes. Corner of Moorhead and Mint Street, right by the Panther Stadium. And I saw a lady holding up a sign, and it said, "Honk for suicide prevention." Please forgive me if that wasn't the exact words on it, but it was.
Yeah, you're right. You're correct.
And so I stopped briefly on my jog. I got a wristband and I kept going. But something in my head said, you need to stop and talk to her. Like, it's something that's more there. And so on my way back, I stopped. We had a conversation. You shared your heart. You shared your story of why you were out here advocating, which I thought was really brave because most people don't talk about suicide. Most people don't like to think about it. And so you were doing it in a way that was non-invasive. It was truly honoring and just like advocating. And you shared your story, which I'm excited for people to hear from you. But I felt really seen after that conversation because you didn't know this, but at that time I was battling my own bouts of depression.
Man.
Yeah. And so it's like silently, right? As men, you don't necessarily, and even somebody who is fully aware and in therapy and knows the importance of community, those seasons still happen. And so to be able to, just have that brief conversation was like a light for me. And I remember going back and I remember posting something on my social media.
You did?
Yeah. I was like,
you took a video too.
Yeah, I took a video and I was like, wow, it really like lit up my spirit. And so ever since then we've been connected and, I knew this opportunity would come, just didn't know when, but it's here now. And so I am, like I said, once again, super grateful to have you on this episode of the Lifeline podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. And see, that's the thing. People tell me all the time I'm doing God's work, and it made me uncomfortable at first. But see, your story, us meeting, it's exactly that. Because I'm always in front of the people that I need to be in front of at that moment. Yeah. And so that's why I always tell everybody, be kind, because you never know what somebody's going through.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like I said, I don't believe in coincidences at all. So I think that I had to be there and you had to be there at the right time. I'm like, why is this lady on the corner?
I love doing that. That's one of my favorite down to earth.
Yeah.
Being an advocate, I love to get uptown, and I do it. I do it during Mental Health Awareness Month in May, as long as it's not too hot, because sometimes
it
it's
gets
too
hot in
hot,
May,
especially standing out there on that corner. And then September, I always do that. And the reaction I get from Charlotteans and people is really wonderful. You'll see people honk, give a thumbs up, get out of their cars. But then the people who you really want to reach are the ones, especially during Suicide Prevention Month in September, where they'll look up in the ceiling of their cars. They'll look around because they don't want to look at that. Because again, like you said, suicide is not a warm and fuzzy subject. Really, mental health is not. But in order to prevent it, we have to have these uncomfortable conversations to become comfortable to invoke change.
That's real. So with that being said, the first question I always ask every guest is, what's your journey line? And essentially a journey line is the things on our path in our journey in our life that shapes us to who we are. With you being who you are as this mental health advocate, this suicide prevention advocate, what in your life, what is your journey line that had got you to this place?
Oh man. Well, first off, I just turned 65 recently.
You look great.
Thank you. But you know something? I never take any day for granted, because it already says in the Bible, no day's promised to us, but it's really true. So what really shaped me was growing up in Gastonia, North Carolina. My mom was a single mom. She had me at 17, and a lot of people don't know this, and some people do, but I don't share it a lot. My father was a famous R&B singer. His name was Johnny Taylor. He had the first ever platinum record certified by the RIAA, and he met my mom when he was a gospel singer with the Soul Stirrers, because my grandmother was a gospel promoter. And back then, because of racism, Black entertainers would come to town, but they couldn't stay in hotels or go really to restaurants. So they would come to my grandmother's. When I was a little girl, I remember sitting on the lap of Pop Staples, or the Staple Singers, and him sharing stories with us. But my mom met my father and got pregnant, and he was nowhere in our lives. And that started molding me first. She told me when I was 5 who my dad was, but when I got older, I was like, why isn't he here? Why isn't he helping? And how I really followed my father was because the more famous he got, Jet Magazine was the one that helped me stay in touch with my father for many years, because when I got older and started reaching out to him, he didn't respond. So that was first thing, growing up without a dad. And then when I turned 14, I became a parent husband. And what a parent husband is where your mother is a single mom and you're the oldest. So next thing you know, you're working not for things for yourself, but things to help, help my mom with my other siblings. So that took a toll. And then the thing is, when I was 16, I had a baby prematurely, and she passed away. And it took me years to realize that was trauma. That was traumatic. So all of those things was like a tempest in a teapot. But that's what I tell the youth today. Y'all had an opportunity to get help, and you know about depression and anxiety. Growing up in 1960, I was born in 1960, we didn't know about that because culture matters. And in the Black culture, we sure didn't talk about mental health. And when we talked about it, it was not very positive. So growing up with that, you just kind of internalize it and keep it in. And then I started, I graduated from high school, low self-esteem, went to college for a little bit and just became buck wild while I was there. I was kind of just wandering around. I worked, never did drugs and alcohol. But as I always say, self-medicating doesn't have to be drugs or alcohol. But it wasn't until I turned 35 years old. I'd had my son. He was 12. His father was nowhere in the picture at the time. And that's when depression really hit. Now, granted, I was dealing with depression all my life, but it didn't rear its really ugly head until 1995. And I was working as a pharmacist tech at Carolina's Medical Center, which is now Atrium Health. My son was 12. He was doing well in school. And the symptoms were I was extremely tired. I was, couldn't concentrate on my job as a pharmacist tech. I wasn't eating. My personality changed, my appearance changed. And it was only until my supervisor realized something was going on. So they sent me to get help, but I was still resistant. And for weeks, I was struggling until on February 14th, 1995. I said, I can't take this anymore. I was in tremendous pain and I almost died by suicide. But before I did that, I reached out to a hero. And it was my Aunt Spanky. Her real name is Kelly. And we always been close, 3 years apart. And I reached out to her and I told her you could have my shoes. Because I felt like somebody had to know the pain I was in. And I tell people all the time, when you are suicidal, it's really physical pain. It's tremendous emotional, physical pain from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet. And I was in tremendous pain. I had a plan, but I don't ever really share my plan because that's not what's important. What's important was I was in such pain, I was going to take my life. So I called my Aunt Spanky and I told her you could have my shoes. Now, in the Black culture, how we are, she could have said, oh, she's just wanting attention. I'm not going to bother her. I'm just going to leave her alone. She didn't. When I called her and said, you could have my shoes, we hung up. She called me back. She said, are you going to kill yourself? I said, yes. And she went into action like a superhero. And as bad as that day was, she had me involuntarily committed with the police, handcuffing me in front of my son, taking me to a mental health facility. And as bad as that day was, and that week was, where I was at a mental health facility, I was diagnosed with clinical depression. She saved my life. And I didn't realize what impact she made that day on me. So when I came back to work a week later, that's when I really realized how bad stigma is. And it's a big difference between, okay, if I'd have been in a hospital to have surgery or have a baby, it would have been a totally different, bringing stuff to me, checking on me, cards. Mental health, we don't get that a lot when you are in a psychiatric hospital. So anyway, came back to work and my assistant director of pharmacy said, I whispered in my ear, the same person who sent me to get help, said, Fonda, you don't have to let anybody know you were in a psychiatric hospital. I was very taken aback by that because once I was diagnosed with clinical depression, a real disease, and the psychiatrist said it's never going to go away, I was okay because I was like, okay, this is physical, just like diabetes and hypertension that run in our culture. I said, I can live with this. But when you're dealing with a mental health condition and how people view it, it's like, oh, she's crazy, she's nuts. So when my supervisor said that, I knew then I was going to have to become an advocate. I knew then. So I've been an advocate for over 20-something years, but I didn't become that strong, educated advocate until I joined NAMI. And that's where my journey started in 2014, the last time I seriously thought about suicide. When I came out of my gym, I was going to jump right off a parking deck, and a voice said, get in the car and drive. And the moon was shining on my car, the brightest I've ever seen it. It followed me all the way home to the back of my parking lot at my apartment complex. First thing I did was call my therapist and said, hey, I'm in trouble. I need help. I have no money. Then I came in my apartment, walked right by my son, Wes, and went in my bedroom and shut the door. He came right behind me and he said, Mom, you can help people. I know you can. That was an aha moment right there. Next day, I went to see my therapist and I joined NAMI. And from NAMI, Charlotte, the National Alliance on Mental Illness Charlotte, I got appointed to the state board. I served 2 terms, 6 years. I volunteered, as you said, with Mental Health America, American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And in 2020, I started my own nonprofit on Valentine's Day 2020. I started Wellness Action Recovery, which is all about putting in the work in positive manner. And my acronym spell WAR. I go to war every day just to get up out of the bed. Some days are harder than others. I go to war every time the public sits up. It's a news story that somebody with a mental health condition has done something that we're all crazy. We're all nuts. So that's where my journey has brought me to. And if you would have told me 30 years ago when I was handcuffed and taken to a mental health facility, I was going to be doing the work that I'm doing and sharing my story. Because you know something, you said something about being brave. And that's something that I don't even like people to put brave or strong. Because to me, I look at it as just sharing my story. And when we say brave, it's kind of like, well, Fonda, you really shouldn't be sharing your story. You really, you are. But one day I just hope with advocates or people with lived experience, whether it's substance abuse, mental health, or suicide, that people would just look at us as, hey, they're just sharing their story.
Yeah.
And we get rid of that brave and we
Yeah.
get rid of that strong, because it's still that stigma that, oh, I wouldn't do that if you, but I'm not ashamed.
Yeah.
Because the brain is an organ,
Yeah.
the most powerful organ in our bodies. And if it goes down, everything else goes down. So I am very proud to wear that, that I've gone through more than one suicide attempt and got here. But now when I went through that, I said, you know something, Fonda, you got to turn around and help other people just like you. And you got to do it through your story, but more so, it's got to be a call to action. Yeah. You got to let people know that suicide is preventable through education and caring.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your story. And I agree with you. Brave isn't the most accurate word. I think vulnerable. Mm-hmm. I think transparent. Mm-hmm. Those are more accurate and honest words, because you are sharing your truth and your story. And in a lot of ways, people would tell people who've had those experiences to feel ashamed about it. Mm-hmm. Now, keep that to the back. Don't talk too much about that. Talk about how you overcame, and but don't necessarily
tell that other part. And see, that's the thing. As soon as someone dies by suicide, the S comes out. It's two S's that actually come out: stigma and shame. That's why, like with police officers, when they die by suicide, most of the time you don't even know. Yeah. And when you do know, guess what? They don't get the died in the line of duty funeral. They get the shh, be quiet. It's embarrassing thing. But you know what I always tell police officers? I say, y'all deserve that funeral, because guess what? If you were in any other field, you'd be alive. Mm-hmm. That what they do is not normal. It's not natural. I read a report that said that, for most of us, we see about 4.5 episodes of trauma. But then when you go back and think about your life, it could be longer. So that's on average. But for police officers, they see anywhere from 187 incidents to 800 incidents during their career. Wow. That's trauma. So again, that's why people think, if you've attempted suicide, I wouldn't share that. Why? First off, that's my journey. Right. And secondly, as I share in QPR training, which I know we'll talk about the training, is 46% of people who die by suicide have a treatable mental health condition. Mm-hmm. So it's physical. 90% have shown signs. So, but society as a whole think we're weak, we're selfish, and we're crazy. Yeah. And we're none of that. So that's why I said I don't mind sharing my story or putting it out there about suicide if it's going to help someone and it's going to help prevent suicide.
Yeah, you said this a couple of times, but I want you to elaborate a little bit on it. You said that mental health is as a physical condition. What do you mean by that?
Because the brain is an organ. This thing right here, I did a symposium a couple years ago with Discovery Place. They had an exhibit called Mind Matters. They asked me to come and speak. And they put me in a room on a Saturday with a real human brain that was in a jar. And I should have just done a monologue, because I went over to the brain. I should have. I went over to the brain, and it was in a jar, and I looked at it and I said, man, you're the ugliest organ, in my opinion, in our bodies. You only weigh 1 pound, and yet you're so powerful. You control everything. Yeah. You are the computer of our bodies. And it's so misunderstood. Yeah. So again, because one of the things that they did when they discovered that I was dealing with clinical depression, they drew my blood. Yeah. There are certain mental health disorders that they can find out from drawing your blood. Your blood tells a story from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet. So when a psychiatrist said, you have depression, clinical depression, a disease that's never going to go away, you could have knocked me over with a feather. But again, the brain is an organ. So I was not, even though I was upset, I was like, okay, you can live with this, just like if you were dealing with diabetes or hypertension, because it is an organ. So that's why for me, there's never been a shame of me suppressing that I have depression or deal with anxiety as well, because the brain is an organ. And I think if people really looked at it that way, it would get rid of a lot of the stigma. Yeah. It would get rid of a lot of, but no, they look at it as, because you think about it for a second, Matthew, how do movies and television portray people with mental health issues, even in mental health facilities? How are they portrayed?
They are looked as like outcasts. Or like I don't like to use the word, but crazy or that type of thing. But it's extreme. It seems like it's something extreme.
This year was the 50th anniversary of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I'd never seen it, but they asked me to come and view it. And then me and Ramona Holloway, that used to work with 107.9, we had a talk back. When I saw that movie, thank goodness my mom didn't let me go see movies when I was 15 that were R-rated, because if I would have seen that movie, it would have made it worse the day that the police officer came and got me. When you look at it, they mistreated. I never even heard of, I'd hear people say Nurse Ratched.
Yeah.
I never knew where that came from until I saw the movie. She was mean. She was cruel. She was ugly to people with mental health issues. And it was every stereotype in that movie, from taking medication, straight jackets. The mental health facility was dreary, ugly, and like I said, they were heavily medicated, just walking around. So even though we are now in the 21st century, mental health, when they do movies and television, it's still like we're back in the dark ages.
Yeah.
And not only that, people make fun of people with mental health issues. Comedians make fun of us. I get really upset by that. And I'll tell people sometimes, I say, you know something? It's funny. I didn't know mental health was funny. And I said, but it's funny how y'all will make fun of us, a physical condition. And yet, if somebody lost their breasts, you wouldn't say, oh, you're lopsided. If they lost both breasts, you wouldn't say, oh, you're flat-chested. You wouldn't make fun of that. So why in society do people think even the president of the United States makes fun of people with mental health issues and learning disabilities? And I'm not cool with that, because all it does is feed into the stigma, which feeds into people not wanting to go get help, which feeds into substance abuse, which feeds into suicides.
Yeah, it's just a cycle.
And it's a very negative cycle.
Yeah, and once you're in it, it's hard to get out of it. With that, the stigma and the shame, the S's that came out. So when you first started speaking, did you ever have any reservations because of that? Or, what was those early days like?
A lot of work, a lot of hard work. But you know something? I was never, like I said, ashamed. I know it probably cost me getting jobs, because people are like, oh, I saw her on TV and she's talking about her mental health issue. And see, it's that stigma of we're all violent. They might do something. You heard that going postal. Back in the day when some postal workers, kill people, like, oh, they're going to go postal.
I didn't know that's where that came from.
Yeah, that's where that came from. So again, for me, it was very easy. I was never ashamed. I knew that when I got out here and started sharing my story, there was a chance that I wouldn't, maybe a job that I applied for, I wouldn't get, because they would look at that, ooh, I don't know about her. But for me, it was a no-brainer. And when I started, it was all because of my supervisor coming to me and saying, you don't have to tell other people you were in a psychiatric hospital. Like, oh, you need to be ashamed of what you did, or the fact that you got mental health. So for me, it was a no-brainer, and I put in a lot of work. And I first started with youth, because youth got it automatically. They got it. But then when you look at me, you see I'm a Black female. And I knew in my culture, our culture, that it's an uphill battle. I read a report one time that says 64% of Black people believe mental health is a sign of weakness. And then when you throw in the factor that we come from generational trauma, we're a culture of secrets, and the fact we come from a very religious background. Pray about it. Don't claim it. Give it to God. You look at that as, man, this is going to be one hard uphill battle. You're like, hey, but you'd be surprised that when I get in front of people, from pastors to congregations and stuff, it's amazing how many of them are like, you hear that, thank you. Somebody is saying, look like me, and saying it's okay not to be okay. So it's a journey. It still is a journey. That you still run into. I was watching one day, I was turning the TV set, and there was a Black pastor. Matter of fact, I need to stop by his congregation on Freedom Drive. He said that he didn't like people who died by suicide, because we needed to, we didn't give ourselves life. We can't take it away. And we just need to pull ourselves up by the bootstrap and keep it moving. Now imagine his congregation sitting there, some of them dealing with depression, anxiety, thinking about suicide. And that's the kind of comfort that they get.
That shame.
That's the shame. That's what I told you, the stigma and the shame. And I said, education is truly the key and the foundation. Because even with me, when I started on this road, And that's why I said I've been an advocate for over 20 something years, but I didn't become a strong, educated advocate until I got educated. You really do have to get educated on mental health, because even some of the things I thought about coming up or were told when I was coming up, I had to learn to dispel those because those were myths. So the thing is, I tell everybody, once you get educated on mental health, it really takes those, like how they'd had those mules and horses with the blinders on, and you can only go one way and look one way. You have to take those blinders off to see that mental health encompasses everything that goes on in this world. If you had an umbrella and you put mental health up on the top, everything that goes on in this world, domestic violence, poverty, hunger, racism, all of that, mental health is on top of everything. So that's why it is so important. There's no health without mental health, but people still don't believe that, or they don't want to believe that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've given me a lot to think about in a lot of ways, from the education piece to sharing your story, which I truly believe that vulnerability is the bridge to connection. I think that like when people like you said, you get in front of a church and, they see a Black woman who has had this experience, other Black women will be able to relate with that, that story. And I think of myself as an athlete, being able to share my journey on mental health or connect with other guys, me sharing mine, being vulnerable, creates that connection for other people to feel vulnerable and ask questions like, how did you get help, get the education that you need? One thing that I was looking at, I have some numbers. So I pulled up an article from the University of Washington in 2024, and something stood out to me. So it was a study over 20 years. But a couple of things that pulled up is like research shows that about 1/3 of college athletes struggle with symptoms of depression and anxiety. I can totally relate to the depression and anxiety, but for me, anxiety, I used to have these butterflies before games and didn't know what that was, anxiety, right? That performance, that pressure to do all these different things, be perfect, even though nobody's perfect, it creates that, right? And then the most alarming one to me was that suicide is now the second leading cause of death for college athletes. That blew my mind.
Yes.
And I think over that 20-year study, that the number of suicides doubled for college athletes. And that was very shocking to me. Very, very shocking. But also I recognized that this generation of athletes are under a different type of pressure, still have the school, still have the performance. You add another layer of social media being something that is key. You can look at one comment and somebody can give you 100 praises, but one person said you suck, or this person, that's all you stick to, right? We all know that negative comments land and stick a lot healthier. But I say all that to kind of transition us to this idea of like education and also athletes. One thing that I have known about you is that athletes have a special place in your heart.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we connected, really, because athletes have a special place. I'm a former athlete myself. But where did that come from for you? Why do athletes take up such a space in your heart when it comes to this advocate work?
Well, I'm proud mom, 72. So it goes back to my son, Wes. And, it's with Wesley, he started getting recruited. Like I told you, even though I was struggling with mental health issues, I knew the importance of education. Yeah. And I knew the importance of, here I had a Black male, and I knew the statistics for him going the other way, the negative way instead of the positive way. So I knew then, I said, my son is going to be somebody, he's going to make something of himself. So my brother, I give my brother a lot of credit, who helped me a lot with Wes, because you got to have a positive male figure, brother, cousin, somebody. Yeah. And my brother was there. And my family was, my grandmother was very instrumental. My mom, they all, even my stepfather, they were all instrumental in helping Wesley to succeed. So anyway, Wes was an honor student from K through 12th grade. He started getting taller and taller. I never will forget when I went to court when he was in middle school to have my child support increased, because I went to CPCC, took a law class and learned you can have your child support increased every 3 years, depending on the circumstances. And I hadn't had it increase. And Wesley was eating me out of a house and home by the time he got to middle school. And I never forget this, I took his middle school football pitcher to court in Gastonia, because that's where my child support was from. And I told the judge, I said, you see this picture right here? I said, this is my son now in middle school. He's eating me out of a house and home. He's a good kid. He's doing well in school. I need an increase in child support, because I wrote my own complaint and everything and got it. But so Wesley was just growing, came into his own by the time he got to high school. He was playing, he was on the defensive side of the ball. Then they moved him to right tackle.
Okay.
And then left tackle because of his footwork. Yeah. And he was mad when they moved him to the offensive side of the ball. I'm not going to play football. I'm quitting. I said, no, you're not. No, you're not. So he stuck with it and came into his own. And then the schools started coming. First school that offered him off the bat was Duke. And I knew he could do the schoolwork, but they were awful in football. Yeah. And I kind of wanted him to go there because when I was a little girl at 6, I had open heart surgery when I was a little girl. And if it wasn't for Duke University and the doctor, I wouldn't be here from that. So he started getting recruited at Stanford, Vanderbilt. He had a lot of academic schools. But at 17, and you can attest to this, when the coaches come to the school or the house with the big national championship ring on, like Coach Spurrier did, and the assistant coaches, that's all y'all see. Yeah. So he's like, Mom, I'm going to Florida. I said, okay, you pick the school. You're going to have to do the schoolwork, because I didn't play with academics, because I had him sign. Because when y'all go to college, unless you sign a document, your parents don't see your grades. Yeah. I didn't play that. Yeah. I'm like, you need to sign that when you get to school.
Progress report.
Yeah, I need to see that, sir. So he did. And he ended up going to the University of Florida. But he got down there, he didn't like it. He was homesick. And then, of course, coaches they're not always honest. Because I asked Coach Spurrier, I said, hey, I saw an article in Sports Illustrated that said you're going to the Washington Redskins. Oh, Fonda, I'm not going to go. Now, told me that straight to my face. Yeah. And then when he went, I had a scathing article in what is it, Gameville Time or whatever it is. And so Wesley was like, Mom. And plus, Wesley lost a teammate his freshman year. I cannot remember the young man's name, but he was a running back, and his dad was actually a neurosurgeon at the University of Florida at the hospital, and he died from a heat stroke. And so I think that took a lot more toll on Wes than he admitted. But anyway, he was homesick, didn't like Gainesville. Coach Spurrier had left. Zook came in. He didn't even go talk to him. He said, Mom, I want to leave. And I said, well, hey, you picked the school. So you need to pick where you want to go next. So a lot of the schools came back and said, hey, we'll take him. So he decided to go to Wake Forest. And he went there. And when he transferred from from Florida to Wake, they only took 2 classes. So he had to hit the ground running. He graduated on time. So Wes was a big left tackle. He had really good games. He was a good player. But a lot of people were asking, does he want to go to the league, He told me, he said, Coach Grove took a lot of fun out of it. And I never put that pressure on Wes. Now, I was one of them moms. I really believed in education is the key. So he said, Mom, I'm hanging up my cleats. He said, I'm going to go to school down in Florida at Full Sail in Orlando, Florida, that has produced Emmys, Oscars, Grammys. He wanted to be a music producer, and thank God they changed that, because I didn't want him to follow in the footsteps of his grandpa in the music industry at all. So he ended up doing an internship at WBTV, and he now is an executive producer and on-air talent for the ACC Digital Network, has his own radio show here in Charlotte, and then he just got the job as a CW sideline reporter. So Wesley lost all that weight because he was 6'4", 310 at the time he was offensive lineman. I told him, I said, y'all look like y'all gonna have babies, because they had all that the big guys. He lost all that weight. He came to me probably about 5 or 6 years ago and told me the whole time he was playing college football, he was struggling with anxiety. Yeah. And I was shocked, because I'm like, my child's right in front of my nose. I deal with depression, anxiety. Why didn't I see it? And then when he told me that, I said, you know something, Fonda? There's probably a lot of other players that have been dealing with that, that played with Wesley and play now. Right. So I decided, I said, you know what? I'm going to start talking to players. And sure enough, the risk between I call them the wristband conversations. That's why I'm so protective of them, because they're more than just wristbands, they're lifesavers. I started talking to players, and it was amazing to me. Here I am, a stranger, a woman, older woman, Black woman, players opening up to me. I'm going through this, Miss Fonda. I'm going through that, but I'm not going to get help. So see, I have extended sons who are college coaches, and one of them happened to be at Oregon State. And I was talking about how many players, especially in our culture, smoke weed. And they said, and some of them don't even try to hide it with black players because, again, you go back to our culture. We've always made fun of mental health. We've never taken it seriously. And we've always looked at it as a sign of weakness. So when you're an athlete and you're black, you definitely look at it as a sign of weakness. And even though you're struggling, what you going to do? You're going to self-medicate.
Because drink, smoke.
Drink and smoke, because in our culture, it is more accepting to have to smoke and drink than to go get help. That's just how it is. So it was amazing to me how many players opened up to me from NC State, Wake Forest, Clemson, any school we played, Delaware. I always would make it a habit, as long as it wasn't really late, that when I got finished talking to the Wake Forest players and putting the wristbands on them, to walk over to the visiting side. And this year, there was a player with Georgia Tech. Didn't know him. I was standing there talking to all of the players who I could talk to. And I told them what the wristband was about. And I asked them, do they want one? Every player put one on. And one of the players told me, he said, thank you so much, Miss Fonda. I will wear this wristband forever. Anytime I get that kind of response from a player, to me, it's more than them just wanting to wear the wristband. To me, it's like I'm hitting that nerve that they want to talk to somebody. Because all of them have told me there's no way they're going to talk to their coaches. And see, this is the thing that kills me with universities and colleges. They will always tell me when I come, like I talked to a player at UNC Charlotte. He said, Miss Fonda, I want you to come and talk to our team. But then when I call a school, I talk to an assistant athletic director, and they tell me, well, we're not taking on anybody right now to come talk to our players. What? And this is the thing that really kills me, because the first thing they'll tell me is, we got a counseling center. I know that. We have sports psychologists. I know that too. And I'm not knocking that. I'm glad we do. It's very important resource. But again, how many of those players really take advantage of that? Because when I talk to them, they're not going. Because they're so worried that if they go see a therapist or the sports psychologist and it gets back to their head coach, that the head coach is going to cut their playing time, or even they're worried about losing their scholarships or being benched. So they don't say anything. And so that's why I'm saying, it's just, I don't take away from the professionals. We need them. I have a therapist, don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, we also have to look at other things. And I would put my lived experience up against anybody, because it's one thing for a therapist, psychologist, or psychiatrist to say, hey, if you put in the work, you can get to this point. It's another thing for them to see walking, living, breathing, recovery. And I know men like to talk to men, but I guess it's that mother in me. I have such a mother loving kind of thing.
Safe space.
Players open up to me like it's no business. And I really appreciate that, because every time I talk to a player, I think about Wesley, that he was struggling right up under my nose. Wesley goes to therapy. He doesn't mind. He's not taking medication, but I'm sure if he had to, he would. But players really open up to me, and that's a gift to me. And not just players. I go on college campuses. Wake is a very predominantly white school. You may as well say it is a white school. It's very rich. It's elitist. And yet when I went up there in September and put the teal and purple ribbons on them, I needed a couch and a chair. So many students opened up. So it's all about, like you said, being vulnerable, me not being ashamed, and being willing to share my story, and for others to open up and share theirs. Because anytime I go and speak at a high school setting, or college, and they're sitting down and I'm speaking, and I say, hey, any questions or comments? They won't say anything. But the minute I get finished speaking and saying thank you, oh my God, thunder and heard. Miss Fonda, I'm going through this. Miss Fonda, I'm going through that. And sometimes I give out my card. Sometimes I give out my phone number. So for me, student athletes, because when I go to games, and Lord knows I love college football way more than pro, they call me football mom. I have I sit in the same section. If I'm not there, people text me, hey, where are you? I have my authentic pom-poms. But when I'm looking at those guys out there playing, most people look at them as big, strong, and fast, correct?
Yes.
I look at them as, how many of them are struggling? How many of them are going to go back to their dorm or apartment and smoke weed? How many of them are going to get in trouble? How many of them are going to drink? And how many of them are suffering and in silence? That's what I see through those eyes. Even though I'm out there cheering, go Deeks and all of that, a lot of them are struggling because they tell me. But then when I reach out to the schools and say, hey guys, I can help y'all. I don't know if it's because I don't have the credentials or what, but they don't seem to jump at the chance for me to come and help these young men or women. So that's why I take it upon myself after every game to go and use my wristbands as a way to start that conversation, hear what they're saying, and then be able to help them.
Absolutely. So you really are just building relationships with these individual student athletes. And I believe that athletes are the biggest influencers on campus. And so if they are influenced by you and they see the benefit of it and the support, they tell their friend. Their friend tells a friend, and the next thing you know, everybody's wearing the green wristbands on campus, right?
Yeah.
And so I think about just personal connection. I think relationships are our greatest wealth, and that through relationships, you can find the biggest transformations. Positive. But with that being said, when you think about your journey and with talking to student athletes, is there a particular story that has happened along the way that has really, opened your eyes?
Yeah, it really lets me know that I'm on the right path.
Yeah.
Because I always tell you, just like you and I connected, it's like God always puts me where I need to be and in front of who I need to be. So back in, 2020 when COVID was going on and George Floyd, and we were all at home. I followed BYU, Brigham Young University, and people look at me funny like that because, Utah is extremely white. BYU is very religious. Very religious. And I'm going to tell you, when I went out there for a visit, it's totally different out there. Totally different. But running it back some. So I just happened to be on Twitter scrolling one day because my extended son used to be a coach there. And so when he left, I still, you don't unfollow people. I said, let me just keep following BYU. And so I was looking at this video, and they had done a video called Be the Change because they were talking about what happened with George Floyd and social injustice. So I was looking at the video, and what I'm about to say is nothing private because it made national news and then local news. And I was looking at this video, and it was a young man on there by the name of Chaz Ayu. And Chaz was a star linebacker with BYU. When he committed to BYU, he flew in on a helicopter to LaVelle Stadium. He flew in. He was the guy. So he's biracial. His mother is white, had mental health, drug, like we said, mental health, substance abuse issues, all of that stuff. His dad was black, nowhere to be found. And then Chaz was adopted by the Ayus, Joanne, Polynesian, Jason, Samoan, and Jason was a coach there, and he's over academics for BYU now with athletes. So I watched the video, and Chaz was the first one up, and he said, "Be the change." And something just went all through me. Something said, something's wrong. So I watched the whole video, which had white players, black players, Polynesian, Samoan players. And when I watched it afterwards, I read the tweets that BYU fans and people out in Utah said. Oh man, they were saying ugly stuff. Shut up and play football. Black Lives Matters, destroying the family. Just all this negativity. So Chaz was got upset by it, and he posted a tweet, and he said, "Funny how y'all would cheer for us on the field. We need you to understand our pain, not fight it." That was the gist of it. Oh, when he did that, they lit him up even more. And I said, my God, this young man is getting eaten alive, So I said, I got to reach out to him and see if he's okay. Now, I always, I'm a QPR instructor, and I know we'll talk about that. But the best way to save someone's life is checking on people, caring. So I didn't know him at all, but I said, I got to reach out in his DM and see if he's okay. So I reached out in his DM and I said, "Hey, young man, are you all right? Are you okay?" Hours passed, and he finally came back, and he said, "Yes, ma'am, I'm okay, thank you." I didn't believe him, so I asked him straight out, "Are you suicidal? Do you have a plan?" So he disappeared for 2 weeks. In the QPR training, the question, persuade, refer, suicide prevention training that I teach, it says, if the person is reluctant, be persistent. If they say, "Hey, I'm not suicidal," but you had that gut feeling that they are, or they're in crisis, you don't say, "Well, okay, they said they were okay." No. I, for 2 weeks, in his DM, I was like, "Let me help you get help. I can help you. We can get through this. I'm a suicide survivor." I was doing everything but throwing in the kitchen sink. So he came back 2 weeks later. He said, let me ask you something. He said, did my parents put you up to this? I said, no, I don't know your parents. And at the time I didn't. He said, did the coach put you up to it, talking about my extended son? And I said, no, I knew you were in trouble and I wanted to help you. He said, well, I could use your help. I deal with depression and anxiety. So he and I started talking offline, and he told me in a text, he said, 2 weeks before you reached out to me, I was planning my suicide. So simply caring and knowing the signs, QPR, even though he didn't say in his tweet, I'm suicidal, I'm going to kill myself. I had that QPR, suicide prevention training, gives you that spider sense. I knew something was wrong. And so 2 years ago, in 2023, when I walked 28 miles around uptown Charlotte to bring awareness to suicide in my 28th year as a suicide survivor, Chaz graduated from BYU. And then on December 14th of last year, he turned 26. And coming up on December 14th of 2025, Chaz will be 27 years old. He is still alive because of QPR training and simply caring. That simple, are you all right? Are you okay? Turned into a conversation that recognized the signs, a conversation that saved his life. And that will probably always be, even when I share this story, as many times as I have, it doesn't even seem real to me because he didn't say in his tweet, I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to take my own life. That QPR training, it gave me spider sense and I knew exactly what to do. And that is, it's just a blessing. And not only is Chaz alive, but other people are alive, not through what I've done, but other people who I've trained have turned around and saved people's lives. So that will always be, to me, the best story ever as far as my journey of not only helping people, but helping student athletes. Because they, it's like that mentality being a student athlete or athlete, you can't show any fear, you can't show any stress, you can't show any vulnerability, and you just squash it. But yet y'all are struggling because you're human.
Yeah, no, that's what
you're human.
Very much so humans, right? And that's what, when we think about this year, I've seen some really tragic incidences with Kyron Lacey, played for LSU, was going to be a pretty good, a top draft pick, in my opinion. He was a great wide receiver out of LSU, died by suicide. He had a lot going on off the field in general. And so I can imagine that he probably felt like his world was crashing down. And then Marshawn Nealon, who played for the Cowboys most recently this month in November, a couple of days before he died by suicide, he scored a touchdown. Everybody could see this kid who was on the mountaintop almost. But then, unfortunately, the tragic news came out a few days later that he had died by suicide. And something that you were alluding to is that these players are going through so much that people do not see. And even like with Chaz, right? He was going through so much that people, all they saw was the jersey. All they saw was the smiles, maybe. But yeah, what would you say? What would you tell the world about that emotional weight that they are experiencing that most common people might not understand of why somebody might take their die by suicide?
Yeah, because it goes back to the fact that people look at athletes from the time that they're little, from middle school, high school, college. They look at them as different. They're big, they're fast, they're strong. You heard me allude to that just a little while ago. They're human. Their brains are no different than anybody else's brains. And this is what I always tell people, even to get off the subject a little bit, but still tie it back together. When you look at famous people that died, Robin Williams, Chesley Christ, the Miss USA, when she died by suicide, the media was reaching out to me and people were calling me like, I can't believe she took her own life. She was famous. She was beautiful. She was smart. I said, guys, this is the thing I always tell everybody. Mental health does not care on what side of town you live on. It doesn't care how much money you got in your bank account. It doesn't care if you have a jersey on or a t-shirt on. It doesn't care that you're beautiful, you're smart. It does not care anything about what you do in life.
Right.
It just strikes. And that's why I always tell everybody, we have a lot of discrimination in this country, but one thing does not discriminate is mental health.
Absolutely.
It doesn't care if you live in Myers Park, the university area, Freedom Drive. It treats us all the same. I will say that with athletes, especially at the professional level, even with Chesley Chris, they have the money and the means to get help. But what about the people that, for instance, in Mecklenburg County, we have over 2 million people living in Mecklenburg County. 217 people move here every day to Charlotte. And guess how many hospitals that we have to help us between Atrium and Novant? We only have 300 and something beds.
Yeah.
We only had 300 something beds. The mental health facility that I was in, I had private insurance at the time. It was in Pineville. Now, I haven't been back to Pineville. I cannot make myself go. It's still so traumatic. I cannot go. Maybe one day I'll get back there. But Cedar Springs that I was in, about a year or two later, they tore it down. They didn't replace it with another mental health facility. It's an Office Depot now, I guess, if it's still there. Strategic Behavioral Center. I was working there as a receptionist. It was for children ages 12 to 17. They tore it down. Nothing has been replaced. So if you keep tearing down mental health facilities and you're not replacing them, where are we supposed to go?
Right.
The new mental health facilities are the jails and the ERs. And I found out from a friend of mine whose relative works at Atrium Health, uptown Charlotte, that when people come in crisis or suicidal, some of them stay in ER beds 30 to 40 days while they're trying to find them a place to go.
Whoa.
And I'm gonna tell you, I helped a friend of mine who was suicidal. His daughter was suicidal. They had no beds in Gaston County, Cabarrus County, Forsyth County, Mecklenburg County. Took them 6 hours away to Greenville, North Carolina. That's how bad it is. So to me, the only difference between people who are professional athletes or somebody who has money like Chesley Chris and could have gone anywhere, the only difference is they have the money and the means to get the help, the access, where the everyday person like me, for instance, now I'm on Medicare now. I can get my Medicare. I'm old, y'all. But with Medicare, I might be able to get maybe a little bit more help. But at the end of the day, it's still, if we only have 300 and something beds, like I told my Aunt Spanky, I said, you know something, I really believe if I went into crisis or suicidal now in Mecklenburg County, I really believe that first off, I'm not sure that the magistrate would even have me involuntarily committed. And the other thing is, where am I going to go? So to me, that's the only difference between them. And that's why I always tell people when they're saying, I'm shocked he died. And I said, why, guys? Because he played for the Dallas Cowboys? Why are you shocked? It was some signs with him too. Yeah. Number one, he had lost his mother 2 years prior. Yeah. His girlfriend said that when he lost his mother, that he said he was thinking about ending it all. He called his family and said goodbye. There had been previous mental health issues. So the signs were there. Yeah. People just did not pick up on them. So again, football players, NBA players, they're all human. And then when you look at a lot of NFL and NBA players, they're black. And then you got to look at our culture because again, it's ignored. By the time a child is 14, 50% of us are already dealing with a mental health condition. By the time we're 24, it's 75%. And if we do not get help, 50% turn to substance abuse. So that's what you see. And then you think about parents, single parent moms, and I'm not knocking any of us, but when you think about it, if you see your child turning into a star and they're struggling with mental health issues, what are they going to do? Oh, don't say anything about that. That's going to affect you getting into college. That's going to affect you going into the league. That's going to affect your money. And they ignore it until, look what's going on now with Antonio Brown or even Joseph Randall. He's in a mental health facility, was a big time running back. So again, we're ignoring these things. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if they're NBA, NFL, beauty queen, mental health affects them the same way.
Yeah, no, it does. And one thing that you do advocate for is education. And I think that education piece of having the language to talk about mental health and what's happening, having the education to spot the signs. And you do a lot of these things in your QPR trainings, which we're very passionate about. So what is a QPR training? What does it to the listener? talk to them about what that is and why that is important in suicide prevention.
Okay. Well, first off, suicide is the most preventable death of all deaths, and anyone can save a life. You do not have to be a professional. Anyone can save someone's life. So, like my Aunt Spanky, she wasn't educated, but when I called and told her she could have my shoes, she knew something that was wrong. That is a warning sign. Giving away prized possessions. If somebody comes up and says, hey, I want to give you this. It doesn't have to be money, jewelry, anything that is valuable, but something that person values. And I value my shoes because I got a lot of them, but I wanted her to have them. And she knew something was wrong. So QPR training, I took it from Mental Health America, and QPR stands for Question, Persuade, Refer, Suicide Prevention Training. And the acronyms are similar to CPR because CPR and QPR are basically the same. You are helping someone in a medical emergencies. And this is how a lot of times most people want to help somebody who's in crisis or suicidal, but they hesitate because they feel like they're going to say something wrong or do something wrong and make it worse. And then they would feel responsible for that person's death. So this is how I always get people to take the training when it comes to that. Okay, let's say with CPR. You administer CPR. A lot of people are trained. All police officers are trained. So you administer CPR and they either down the way to the hospital or die down the road. Is that your fault? No, because you did everything you could to save their life. And you did save their life. Same thing with QPR, question, persuade, refer. You save someone's life and they die by suicide down the road. Is that your fault? No, because you saved their life on the front end. It is up to us to put in the work every day to live. Like if Chaz died or Annette, anybody that I stopped by suicide, if they died by suicide, it would hurt me deeply because I care about them. But it would not be my fault because just like me, you got to find those good coping skills and put in the work every single day. So what QPR is in a nutshell, it does 4 things. Number 1, it helps you to recognize the signs of someone in crisis or suicidal. Number 2, it helps you gauge your mental health. Last year, I trained the 199th class of CMPD. And one of the officers, when he reached out to me to get his certificate, he said, Miss Fonda, thank you so much for the training. He said, I deal with depression. And because of the training, it helped me to feel less ashamed to get help. So it helps you to gauge your mental health. The third thing it does, if you pick up on the signs early enough, you can keep somebody from going into crisis or becoming suicidal. You can ask them, do you have insurance? You can ask them, do you have an employee assistance program? You can type in mental health resources in my area and take it to them and say, hey, let's find you somebody to help. And then the fourth thing it does, as I have talked about throughout this conversation, it gives you spider sense. It gives you the confidence to leap in and help someone. The training is 2 hours long. I do it online and in person. I do free training and paid training. I do 1 free training a month online from 12 to 2. Once you get finished with the training, you get a certificate. It lasts 2 years. You are a certified gatekeeper, which means you know how to help someone, whether they're in crisis or suicidal. You get a QPR booklet in PDF form. If I train you in person, you get the booklet in your hand and you get other helpful information that can help you. And I will say it's 2 trainings. It's one for youth and it's one for adults. And I have seen youth take the training and turn around and save someone's life. There was a high school student who was in the marching band at Hopewell High School. One of her bandmates went into crisis and became suicidal. As soon as she got finished with the training, she called the school and told the principal. Because the only difference between the youth and the adult, we urge you to go tell an adult. She called the school, told the principal. Principal Pickard called me. She said, Fonda, did this person take your training? And I said, yeah. She said, she just saved someone's life. So the training is great training. It's very positive and upbeat. And if I had my way, everybody would take the training because anybody can save a life and suicide is everybody's business. It's everybody's business.
I love the way you put it. You articulate it so well. And I took your class last year, so I can attest to the benefit of it, how it sharpens your skills and just kind of keeps you aware. And I think the part of being QPR gatekeeper, you got to be aware and you have to care. That's what I would say.
Exactly.
You got to be aware and you need to care.
That's
so
really good the way you say that. Yeah.
So have that awareness of
Yeah.
like something feels a little bit off, right?
Yeah.
Keep your heart open to like the people that's around you. Like you said, recognize everybody is going through something. But also that's that awareness kind of keeps you a little bit in tune, but then care enough to ask, because that can be uncomfortable. I struggle with asking those hard questions like, yo, what's going on? But like, have that care to say, like, man, how would I feel if tomorrow this person went away and they died by suicide?
Yeah.
Not to say that I would let that guilt shadow me for the rest of my life, but did I care enough to ask that question or just hold space for somebody to open up their heart, at least just be a resource to them in that moment,
and the thing is, not all of us are flaring our arms saying, oh my God, I'm going to kill myself. It could be something very, very subtle, like Twitch, the famous dancer and DJ on the Ellen Show. When he died by suicide, he called his grandfather and said, I love you. His grandfather said, where did that come from? He was saying goodbye. Now, also in QPR training, like you said, it is hard to ask that question. And so you remember in QPR training, I said, you can do this. If you live with someone and they're comfortable with you doing role play, go back and forth and ask the questions. Are you suicidal? Do you have a plan? Now, if they don't feel comfortable with it, you can go stand in a mirror and practice, ask those two questions. Are you suicidal? Do you have a plan? But if you don't, if you cannot ask that question, what did I tell y'all in QPR training? Go find someone who can. Don't beat yourself up. Don't waste time saying, oh my God, I can't ask this. Go find someone who can. But I feel like the more that you do role play and practice that, are you suicidal? Are you thinking about killing yourself? And then this is something else too I get from people. Sometimes we're not quite ready to open up. So if we're not in that immediate, I'm suicidal, I'm gonna kill myself, plant the seed. Because sometimes we're still trying, and listen without judgment, because sometimes we don't need y'all to fix stuff. We're trying to figure things out. So sometimes just plant that seed that I'm here for you, I care about you, and I love you. And then we'll figure it out and then come back to you. Because one thing I get a lot of, people coming to me trying to hammer people to go get help. Because if they're 18 years or older, unless they're suicidal or in crisis at that moment, going to kill themselves or somebody else, it's nothing you can do. So I always tell people, if they're 18 years or older, and they're dealing with substance abuse, mental health, or, thinking about suicide, plant the seed. Say, hey, I'm here for you. I'm concerned about you. I care about you. Bring them resources and leave it at that. Because the more that you hammer home, you need to get help, you should get help, guess what they're going to do? They're going to shut down.
Just going inward.
They're going to go inward because first off, they're grown and they're like, wait, they treat me like a child. So you got to kind of outsmart them. And even though you're still there in your mind hammering them to get help, you got to let them think that they're going to get the help.
It
is.
It's empowering them to do
the work. Empowering them to do the work instead of, you need to go get help, because all they're going to do is shut down.
You can't force.
You can't force them.
You can take a horse to the water, but you can't make it.
You can't. And sometimes you really do have to, just like that song Marvin Gaye made, make you want to throw up your hands and holler. You have to do that, because you cannot make somebody who's 18 years old. And see, that's why it's so important to recognize those signs when they're young. And that's why I want education in the schools, so we can get kids to get help and not to be afraid to get help before they turn 18. Because once they hit that milestone of 18, it's an uphill battle, especially with men.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot of unlearning, rewiring, and it truly is an evolution at that point. But so much, I feel like we can have a 4-hour conversation and just talk for real.
I really appreciate that.
I could. Just to bring it back to athletes, if you were in a room full of coaches, athletic directors, trainers, people who interface with athletes all the time, what would you tell them they need to do in order to support the people that they are in charge of stewarding?
Well, the first thing I would tell them is you need to get educated. That's the key right there. You need to get educated, and y'all need to realize that mental health is health. It is physical health. The brain is an organ. I've had these conversations with coaches and athletic directors and trainers. And the thing is that I don't really think coaches get it all the time, that they need to realize that these are young people whose brains haven't even fully developed.
Still developing.
They're still developing, and they go through stuff. And then they also need to realize that some of these athletes are coming from trauma. No water on in the house. Mom with a man who might be putting hands on her. They're worried about taking care of their families. Remember Bryce Gowdy, who should be out of Georgia Tech 2 years. His picture is still in the Georgia Tech media guide. And Bryce Gowdy was 17 years old and should have been graduated from Georgia Tech over 2 years. And Bryce, when he was getting ready to go to report to Georgia Tech, had a full ride to play football at Georgia Tech, was struggling with trauma, homelessness, trying to take care of his family, depression. And instead of reporting to Georgia Tech, stood in front of a train and died by suicide. So they need to realize that these young people who are coming to them, their brains aren't fully developed. Some of them are dealing with trauma. You got to recognize culture. And when they get here, you need to be, you're kind of like an extended parent. And to me, that extended parent, you need to care about them from the top of their heads to the bottom of their feet. You need to get educated and take mental health first aid. You also need to take QPR, suicide prevention training, because you are their extended parent. When we bring them to y'all, we are entrusting y'all to look after our young men and our young women. And therefore, you need to know about not just looking at them as big, strong, fast, and how they're going to help your team win and get to a national championship or whatever. You need to be looking at them as, how can I help them to be better? Not just physically, but mentally too. Because these student athletes still in 2025 do not trust coaches. I'm sorry, they just don't. And that's a sad thing to me. And again, these schools and universities are letting these coaches off too easy to me. So if I had my way, every coach would take mental health first aid, athletic director, trainer. Every coach would take QPR, suicide prevention training. No ifs, ands, or buts. And I think the NCAA, if suicide has doubled in over 20 years and now the second leading cause of death, we need to do more. And we need to start looking outside the box. But I believe education is the key.
Education definitely is the key. And I think when you talk about kids coming from trauma-filled backgrounds, I definitely see how sports for me was an outlet for my trauma. It allowed me to be able, it was my safe space, right? But what I do know is once that safe space ended, that's when my mental health things really started to become full aware, right? That's when depression really set in and recognized like, oh man, I've experienced this before and didn't have a name for it. That's when anxiety and just identity in general. And so when you feel everything is collapsing, it's easy to feel hopeless. And so I think that education piece could help coaches build on their awareness and their care.
Yeah. And then like you just said, care, that's what I was getting ready to say. You got to care about them, not just, like I said, on the field or when the season's over. Okay, well, they're not playing for us right now, so, whatever. You got to care about them on, off the field, and even after they finish playing. But again, the culture to me around sports, especially now with NIL, because I have a gentleman who took my training twice, who is an assistant athletic trainer at Ohio State. And he told me, he said they knew when NIL came about, they were going to have more problems with students having mental health issues and suicides. And look what we're seeing.
Absolutely. It's a different game. You give kids a lot more money, but also it's a lot more pressure that comes with that.
From home and at the school.
So much pressure, so much more pressure that comes with it. And being able to walk alongside these young men and women as they're going through this is important. I've had a few different guests on here who work in that mental health space with athletes right now and just talk about how it is important to be able to literally walk alongside, be that space where they don't have to see themselves off of how many tackles they're getting or what type of plays they're making, but can they just be that 18, 19-year-old kid?
Exactly.
And just talk, which is important.
It is. And just let them just breathe, because again, when Greg Ellis was telling me that he used to play for the Cowboys and played at Carolina, he said it's almost like these schools and even in the league just had that box that you can check off. Okay, we got therapists. Okay, we got a psychiatrist. But are you really helping them? Are you really listening to them? Are you really understanding that culture plays a big part in why we don't get help? And I don't think that's always the case. And until we change the culture, nothing is going to change, because I say this all the time. What we're doing in this country to prevent suicide, it's not working, because if it was, the stats would be dropping. And instead, last thing I will say is back in June, it was Men's Mental Health Month and Men's Health Month. And I spent a good bit of my gym time walking around talking to men. But under that picture, it had a picture of Robin Williams. And it said, now you remember I told y'all in QPR training that when I say the suicide stats, they're worse than what I report because they're underreported. So it said halfway through 2025, we had lost over 444,536 people to suicide. And out of that number, 75 to 80% were men. And really it's 80% because 80% of suicides in the United States are men. Men are 4 times more likely to die by suicide than females. Men die by suicide every 14 minutes compared to women every 55 minutes. So it's really 80%. And a lot of that comes from suck it up. Man up. You got to be tough. Rub some dirt on it and keep it moving. We got to change that mentality. We got to change it or else they're going to get even worse. And even with suicide with a firearm, 59% of suicides with a firearm are men. 59%. So it still goes back to how y'all were raised, the culture, and it's got to change because we're losing men faster to suicide than just about anything else now.
Yeah.
And we need to do better. Like I always said, suicide is everybody's business. And mental health, no one is immune to a mental health condition. No one is.
Thank you for
You're
sharing.
welcome.
Suicide is everybody's business. My last 2 questions for you. You do a lot of hard work. And when I say hard work, it's heavy.
It's heavy.
It's heavy work. We deal with trauma and dealing with suicide. It's heavy work. What do you do to keep yourself?
My self-care?
Grounded? Yeah, what's your self-care?
Well, I always ask everybody when I'm talking to them or training, I said, what do you put in your mental health toolbox? Everybody's toolbox is going to be different. Now, we might have some of the same tools in it, but everybody's toolbox is different. So for my mental health tool, number 1 is working out.
Okay.
Working out to me is, and I've read reports, is one of the best ways to fend off your mental health condition. Also, my life is structured. When I was at the mental health facility, people ask me all the time, what was a mental health facility like? And I tell them, I said, it's no different than a regular hospital, except we had a reflective mirror in our room so we couldn't break it and hurt ourselves. But the other thing was it's very structured. We got up at the same time. We had therapy at the same time. We ate at the same time. I brought that structure with me. So I live by structure. I try to eat breakfast at the same time, not always because it depends on what I'm doing. I try to go to the gym at the same time. So structure is also in my mental health toolbox along with working out. Walking in nature. When COVID hit and we could not go to the gym, I went to my gym door and it was closed. I'm like, oh my God, what's going to happen to my mental health? I started walking in nature. UNC Charlotte has a beautiful walking trail. I love walking on the nature trail. I love to, another thing I love to do, I love word finds. And I love to, what's another thing I love to do? Good Lord. Eating right. I like strawberries. And I read a report that said blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, great in antioxidants, fish, leafy vegetables, listening to music. Now I tell my grandson that mess they listen to now is mess. That's not music, that's mess. But for me, I gotta listen to my, if you looked at my phone, I have everything from Luther Vandross to Aerosmith to just an array of different kind of music. I like spending time with my son. I love going to college games. And something else I love to do. When my anxiety starts acting up, I have coloring books. I have 3. And I'll go get my coloring book. And it's something how coloring just brings down that anxiety. And believe it or not, as much as I do, volunteering still goes into my mental health toolbox. Because when you're giving yourself to others and pulling them up, it really helps you. So, but I had to learn to really set boundaries because years ago when I went out to Utah to visit Chaz, when I first stopped him from suicide, I was hovering over him like a mother hen. Chaz, did you take your medicine today? Did you go to therapy? You just hover over him, you hold their hand. But it was only until I went out there to visit him and I got ready to leave. And I said, hey, are you taking care? I said, you still need to go to therapy. And he said, oh no, Miss Fonda, that's what I got you for. I was like, you're doing too much. So I have to set boundaries too. And then in my mental health toolbox are some of the things I learned in therapy. For every one negative thought, you replace it with 3. CDE, conscious, deliberate effort, and being consistent. Because see, that's the thing with mental health. You can't say, well, okay, this week I'm gonna work out, I'm gonna do what I need to do, and then the next 2 weeks you take off. I don't have that luxury, because y'all could be sitting up, boy, Fonda sure was a good person. So you got to do that.
Stay consistent.
You stay consistent. And anytime those suicidal thoughts come in my head, and I hadn't had them in a while, but when they do come in my head, I redirect them. Get up and go outside, call somebody, watch something funny. Because I do like watching old shows. I'm a Gunsmoke, Hogan's Heroes, Laverne and Shirley. So you got to find those good coping skills. Put them in your imaginary mental health toolbox and practice them every day. So I've gotten really good at that because I'm such a caring, want to help everybody person. For a while, my battery was getting drained. And one day I was sitting across at Harris Teeter in the parking lot on Mallet Creek. And they had those big Tesla batteries out there. And I saw the Teslas coming and plugging in. And I said, Fonda, that's what you are. You're that battery that people will come and plug themselves in, drain it, and keep it moving, and won't do what they're supposed to do, and then come back around and drain it again. So I had to really learn to set boundaries. So the boundaries are in my toolbox. So you got to find those good coping skills to help you and put them in your toolbox and practice them every day.
That's super good. I think those are really good. I can relate to a lot. One thing, I love to journal, so that's kind of
journaling,
that's in my
yoga, meditation, all of those things. But see, 30 years ago, all I knew was medication and therapy. We got so many things that help us now, so there's really no excuse not to do a better job of taking care of your mental health. It's really not.
It's a lot more awareness. So my last question for you is this. On your journey in this life, when it's all said and done, what is the legacy that you hope to leave behind for others?
I say this a lot. I want to leave the world a little bit better than which I came when it comes to mental health and suicide. I want people to always remember, even though they think they mistake my passion sometimes probably for being pushy and aggressive. I want them to always remember that my goal never wavered. My goal was to help others who were like me, from youth to adults, and also to prevent suicide. And that's it in a nutshell. The awards, when I win an award or something, it makes me very uncomfortable, but because I don't want people to ever get that confused. So when I leave here, I want people to say, man, she made a difference with mental health and suicide prevention. That's it.
Yeah. Well, Ms. Fonda Bryant, I appreciate you being on the show.
Well,
and
thank you.
I absolutely believe that people will say that about you when it's all said and done, because they're saying that about you now. I believe that about you, that you are paving the way for us to destigmatize it, remove the S's, the stigma and the shame, and move with more awareness and care.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. I appreciate you having me on, and I hope this will. Anytime I speak, I don't want it to be just where I spoke. I want it to be a call to action. It's like me running a relay, and I put it in your hand, and then you run it and put it in somebody's hand, because this is everybody's issue, everybody's problem. Everybody knows someone, including themselves, that's struggling. So that's what I want to do. I want to run this relay, and I want to put it in your hand, and you put it in others.
How can people follow you? And then also, do you have any events coming up in 2025 and 2026?
Okay, so you can always follow me as Proud Mom 72 on Instagram and Twitter, and Fonda Bryant on Facebook. And also, now 2025, Miss Fonda's gonna rest some, but picking it right back up in 2026 in April, I will be having my Sanity, Not Vanity event. I had put it up on the shelf because I had switched gyms. So I decided, I said, you know something, Fonda, I'm not going to have it on the inside at a gym. I've decided I'm going to have it at a track, hopefully Mallet Creek High School. And on the inside of the track, I want to have people to come out, and because not everybody can afford to go to a gym. Not everybody lives near a gym and has the transportation. So I want to show at Sanity Not Vanity 2026 how you can work out and get those endorphins going without going in the gym, from hula hoops to jumping rope, and just things. I want somebody there that can teach people how to eat right, and just different things like that. And then I'm going to walk, because next year on February 14, 2026, it will be 31 years I'm a suicide survivor, God willing. So I'm going to walk 31 laps around. So that's going to be April, the last Saturday in April, that will be. And then it will kick off the Green Ribbon Ride with Harley Davidson. So May 2nd, will be the Green Ribbon Ride with Harley Davidson. You don't have to have a Harley to ride. You can have another motorcycle. And no, Miss Fonda does not get on the back of a motorcycle. But I have joined with probably one of the biggest, loudest motorcycle companies around. And I haven't figured it out yet. We're either going to ride from Independence Harley Davidson in Matthews to Speedway and then ride to Madhouse Harley Davidson in Winston-Salem. But if it doesn't work out, we're going to ride from Speedway Harley Davidson to Independence. And I'm very proud to have them. And one of my sponsors, I love them dearly, is 1 Hour Heating and Air, Dependable-worthy. Yeah. And they make the best commercials. And I'm going to tell you, it's something as small as a commercial like that because they're so funny, the father and son. So I'm hoping to make it bigger, but I would like to take it all the way to Madhouse Harley Davidson in Winston. But that will be coming up in May 2nd. I will continue doing QPR suicide prevention training. I haven't picked a date for January, but all they have to do is check my social media. Yeah. And the email is always on my flyer to take QPR training. So I'm just going to keep working hard to prevent suicide and to bring awareness to mental health and substance abuse. Because even though I've never done drugs and alcohol, as I always tell people just don't wake up one morning and say, you know what, I'm going to ruin my life and do drugs and alcohol. Yeah. Mental health, substance abuse, and suicide go hand in hand. So that's just some of the things I'm going to be doing. So just look at my social media and get involved because I love what I do and I'm grateful to be here to do it.
And I'm grateful that you were able to share your journey. I'm looking forward to Abundance 2026 for you, and I look forward to working with you in some capacity and continuing this relationship and then allowing it to grow. So once again, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. And appreciate what you're doing too. Thank you.
Thank you. And as always, like we said at the beginning of the episode, if you know anyone or if you are someone who is struggling with mental health or suicidal thoughts or going through a crisis, call 988 to have some help and stay well. Thank you for listening to the Journey Line podcast. And thank you again, Ms. Fonda Bryant, for being here.
Thank you for having me.